Chair Hernandez. And first of all, let me say thank you to all the advocacy groups that have come forward over these last few months with your thoughts and concerns and your views, and very honestly, your frustrations over the process to this point. What we talked about in the spring with the use of the data that we used in the spring came to fruition when the decennial census data came out on August 12th. The vast disparity between districts, House districts that are 3 times the legal limit that's allowed, it came to fruition exactly what we talked about, and honestly what you as the advocacy groups talked about this spring. The process has been flawed, the process has been overtly political, and it's a shame. We first gathered in this very room to start the process on April Fool's Day, April 1st, which is fitting with this whole process. We gather today on Illinois Constitution Day. Our first Constitution was passed 203 years ago today. We have a process that is admittedly violating the Constitution. The maps that were enacted under HB 2777 are not effective. That's why we're here today. They're not effective. That's what's called for in the Constitution, which means this is no longer in the hands of the Illinois General Assembly. It should be in the hands of the bipartisan commission that is spelled out in our Constitution, our 1970 Constitution. But we continue, the majority continues down this path in an overtly partisan manner to try to enact partisan maps for their political gain. And if you would just indulge me for a second, Madam Chair, Madam Hernandez, I just had a couple questions I wanted to ask as we move into this process. And that is, my first question is, have the new maps that you're planning to unveil, have they been drawn yet?
At the moment, all I know is that they're being reviewed.
So there are maps?
Well, it's the same maps that are on the Google as you have seen them. It's those maps, they're being reviewed. And most importantly right now, it's about getting the feedback, listening to the public, getting the recommendations for any necessary adjustments, obviously.
So we're awaiting input from the public over these hearings, over these 4 days going into the weekend, including hearings at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning in Aurora, which continues the theme that we had from the spring. So I was here yesterday in this very room for a hearing, and the gate was down to this room. So I walked into the adjacent room, which is the House of Representatives room, just behind this hearing room. And what I witnessed yesterday was many House Democratic members in that room looking at their maps, literally sitting in front of laptops, looking at their maps. So to think that this process this is an exercise in futility, unfortunately for all you, the advocacy groups, and for those of us in the minority party. I literally witnessed with my own eyes a member of the General Assembly looking at their map, talking to staff about whether it was square enough or not, which is what I overheard. There was many members of the majority in that room looking at the maps. And I would ask you, the people who are going to testify today, have you been invited into those meetings so far to look at the maps? Are you having solid input on what these maps are going to be? No. They're being drawn by the majority, as we saw in the spring, with partisan intent. So I think the majority needs to be honest and just forget the charade that we've gone through here all spring long, and now with 7 hearings over 4 days, and then another hearing, I assume, in Springfield, as Cherokino said. This is a farce. The current maps that were passed in the spring, HB 2777, is not effective. We should be before the commission. And I would encourage all the advocacy groups to hold the majority's feet to the fire. First of all, what's the rush? Why do we need to pass a map by August 31st? You put the election off until June. As far as I know, congressional maps are nowhere to be found. This hearing isn't about congressional maps, I believe. So I would encourage the majority to listen to the advocacy groups. We've said time and time again, give us at least 2 weeks to review the maps. Not even 2 weeks of hearings, 2 weeks after you put out a map to review it. And don't sit hidden on this room in 600 in the Violating building or the secret map room in the Stratton building and draw your maps at the behest of the politicians. We've given you options, many options over the last several months to take the map drawing out of politicians' hands. That's what needs to be done. But unfortunately, we're going down the same process, and it's going to result, I fear, in another flawed map that's going to pass on August 31st, only for partisan political gain from the majority.